From Beneil Dariush getting snubbed even after an 8-win streak to Khabib Nurmagomedov becoming bait for a money-making scheme. Here are UFC fighters that were snubbed of title shots. Starting with Beneil Dariush, who was robbed even though he had 8 wins. But it seemed that the UFC did not consider him the #1 contender for the lightweight title. In an interview, Dariush expressed his frustration, stating that there are people ahead of me, including the likes of Dustin Poirier. Despite his impressive record, Dariush has yet to receive the recognition he feels he deserves. He's been putting in the work, winning fight after fight, but the UFC has not given him the nod for a title shot. It's clear that Dariush was hungry for a chance to prove himself in the octagon, and it's understandable that he felt frustrated. This snubbing of Dariush had left many fans and pundits scratching their heads, wondering why the UFC wasn't giving him the recognition he deserves. Dariush's frustrations with the UFC came to a head after he lost his co-main event spot at UFC 288 against Charles Oliveira. Dariush was ready to flip a table when he found out that he had lost his position on the card, as he believed that he deserved the co-main event spot due to his impressive record. This loss of position on the card was particularly frustrating for Dariush because he felt that it was a missed opportunity to prove to the UFC and the world that he's the best lightweight fighter in the world. But Dariush is not one to give up easily. He tried to negotiate a title shot with Islam Makhachev. Dariush believed that a fight with Makhachev would be a great opportunity to prove himself as the best lightweight fighter in the world. However, the UFC was not interested in giving Dariush a title shot, despite his impressive winning streak. Instead, they wanted to save Makhachev for the UFC 294 Abu Dhabi card in October, leaving Dariush frustrated and without a clear path to a title shot. In an interview with the Schmo, Dariush let loose his frustration with the UFC. He expressed his disappointment that despite his impressive winning streak, he's still not considered the top contender for the lightweight title. Dariush feels he's done everything the UFC has asked of him, but is still being snubbed. He's also frustrated with the UFC's handling of his fight with Oliveira. This is the 3rd or 4th time that the fight has been scheduled but has yet to happen. It's apparent to Dariush that the UFC is not taking his fight seriously, and he's not getting the respect he deserves as a fighter. It's unfortunate that Dariush has yet to receive a title shot, but he's not giving up. Despite his frustrations, Dariush remains determined to prove himself as the best lightweight fighter in the world. He knows that he has the talent and the drive to succeed, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get a title shot. Dariush has promised his fans that he will continue to train hard and improve his skills, and that he will not stop until he has achieved his goals. When that moment comes, we can expect to see him give it his all and leave everything inside the octagon. Up next, we have Chael Sonnen, who was snubbed for his title rematch with Anderson Silva. Sonnen was set to face off against Anderson Silva in a highly anticipated rematch for the UFC Middleweight Championship. But just as the hype was reaching a fever pitch, Sonnen failed a drug test, testing positive for elevated levels of testosterone. This led to a 6-month suspension by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, effectively ending his shot at the title. Fans and analysts were split on the issue. Some felt that Sonnen had been unfairly snubbed, arguing that he had already served his punishment and deserved a shot at the title. Others felt that he had brought the suspension on himself and that he had no one to blame but himself. Sonnen came within 2 minutes of earning a lopsided unanimous decision in the first bout, but Silva's perseverance and late fight heroics enabled the proposed pound-for-pound kingpin to secure a triangle choke that sent the challenger packing. Even though Sonnen tapped, he still doesn't believe he lost the fight. To this day, he claims to be the true UFC middleweight champion, undefeated and undisputed. You can either believe me or your lying eyes, said Sonnen. Since losing to Anderson Silva at UFC 117, Sonnen had been hell-bent on securing a rematch, but the opportunity never came. But it no longer matters to Sonnen, who has finally decided to move on from Silva and seek challenges elsewhere. With Silva no longer in his crosshairs, Sonnen turned his attention towards light heavyweight champion John Jones, who could be the greatest talent the sport has ever seen. mean? Anderson Silva is no more of a champion than the man on the moon. And trying to pretend he is a waste of my breath. Jon Jones is a real man who'll accept challenges. It might be unfair for Sonnen, but at least he wasn't snubbed twice like Rashad Evans was. This former light heavyweight champion had been looking to reclaim his throne, but he'd been hit with some unfortunate setbacks. It all started back at UFC 128, where he was scheduled to face Mauricio Shogun Rua for the title. But just weeks before the fight, Rashad was forced to withdraw due to an injury. It was devastating for him and his fans, as this was his chance to become a two-time champion. But Rashad didn't give up. He stayed focused on his goal and waited for another opportunity to arise. And it did. At UFC 133, he was slated to face rising star Jon Jones for the title in what was sure to be an epic clash. But once again, fate had other plans. Just days before the fight, Jones had to pull out due to an injury. Rashad was left without an opponent and without a shot at the title. It's hard not to feel for Rashad in these situations. He's put in the hard work, he's trained tirelessly, and he's been ready to fight. But circumstances beyond his control have kept him from reaching his ultimate goal. It's a tough pill to swallow, but Rashad is a fighter through and through. Well, that's not all though. The undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov was also once snubbed for a title shot. Yes, the same Khabib who now holds legendary status in the lightweight division. I mean, I don't get how one of the best fighters to ever set foot in the octagon can be snubbed. His rise to the top of the UFC lightweight division is well documented, but it's not without its share of controversy. He was offered a title fight against Eddie Alvarez, who was the reigning champion at the time, but it was later revealed that he was only being used as a bargaining tool in negotiations with both Alvarez and McGregor. The UFC brass were eager to set up a super fight between the Irishman and Alvarez, and Nurmagomedov was simply collateral in their negotiations. As a result, the Eagle was left without a title shot, and instead had to face Michael Johnson in his next bout. Despite the snub, Nurmagomedov went on to dominate Johnson and win via submission in the third round. He then faced Edson Barboza and won that fight as well, before finally being granted a title shot against Al Aquinta. While Khabib eventually got his chance at the title, it's clear that he was unfairly treated by the UFC at the time. Despite his impressive win streak and his reputation as one of the best fighters in the division, he was overlooked in favor of a super fight that would generate more money for the promotion. However, Khabib didn't let the snub deter him, and he continued to dominate his opponents en route to the title. His perseverance and determination are a testament to his character and his status as one of the greatest fighters in UFC history. It just goes to show that even the greatest fighters have to work their way up the ranks and overcome obstacles before achieving greatness. And that's all for UFC fighters that were snubbed of title shots.